Hello again, welcome back to the potting shed. Today I want to do a care guide and species spotlight for this amazing Variegated Serissa bonsai. Now it's a bit small, so I'll do some close-ups for you, but I was in a garden centre the other day and come on, you've just got to look at this. You can see why I couldn't walk past it. Something really special. The architecture, the structure and the beauty of this plant is just, I can't stop looking at the moment. I'm kind of obsessed with it. I'll give you some close-ups while I'm here. But look at the moss growing up the trunk. If we turn it round, the aerial roots coming down, and the amazing tiny little variegated leaves as well. Just one stunning plant, and this deserves, as you can imagine, to be kept high up. You really want to present this as best you can, so you really get to see everything in its splendor, because this does not deserve to be sat down on the floor somewhere in your garden or sat down in a lower shelf somewhere in your house, because this is an absolute beauty and I love how it looks. I've never owned a Serissa bonsai before. In fact, I knew very little about them. I've only seen the green leafed versions. I didn't realize there was a variegated one, but this really does make such a difference. Those leaves look stunning. So the Serissa plant is native to the wetlands and woodlands of Southeast Asia, so India, Japan and China. So in Europe they're going to be grown as an indoor bonsai because they will not be tolerant to our colder temperatures over the winter. But because it's that type of subtropical environment, we're going to have a little bit of trouble over winter. So listen all the way to the end, because I'm going to give you some tips to try and keep your Serissa bonsai healthy and happy over the winter, because unlike other houseplants and other bonsai, they will struggle in our inside environment and they will die in our outside environment. So we have to be a little bit careful, but you can do it. I've done it with my Portulacaria afra, and I'm sure with a bit of luck I can do it with this Serissa bonsai. So let's go over a care guide, the general tips and hints about this bonsai. So light requirements first. This is quite unusual because this plant really wants and needs a lot of direct sun. Almost all houseplants, and bonsai for that matter, I usually suggest you keep it out of the harsh hot sun. That's the only thing that most plants don't like. But this guy, it needs that level of sunlight and it needs a lot of direct sun. So if you want to keep it in your house, you can't really keep it on a dining room table or on a sideboard somewhere where you can enjoy it, but there isn't, and it's not close enough to a light source. If you're going to keep it inside in a place where you can enjoy it, you're going to have to find a nice light sunny south-facing windowsill for it to be on, so it can get that level of sunlight. Ideally in the summer, if you can keep it outside, it's the best humidity and environment for the plant. So once you get to late spring, when any risk of frost is gone and the nighttime temperatures are above, say 12 degrees, 13 degrees, something like that, then you can put it outside and it will get the most amount of natural sunlight in a sunny south-facing position. Now watering, this is a bit different once again, because it does need a little bit more water than usual. I usually suggest, as a general rule of thumb, that you water and then let it dry out. The first inch or so in the pot, let it dry out and then water again. But this plant will prefer higher levels of water. It won't tolerate drying out at all. So although you don't want to keep it soaking wet, it is going to appreciate those higher levels. So you're going to have to be more on the ball, checking it more often. And except for the winter, you want to be regularly watering it. And specifically for this one, because they're very cleverly and very beautifully grown moss up the base to create that sort of aged look, which looks amazing. This moss, as soon as that dries out, it's going to start dying off. So in this case, if you've got something that looks like this, then a water sprayer to be able to spritz that moss on a probably daily basis just to keep that moist is going to help. Now that won't penetrate to the plant, so that's okay. It's not going to get down into the roots, but you're just keeping the surface moist, and that's what you're going to have to do for something that's got moss around it like that. It won't like drying out, and because you've got it in a sunny position, it will dry out quite quickly. So that's going to need a reasonable amount of your time to check it and keep it how it likes to be. Now, fertilizing or feeding, once again, this is slightly different. It is quite a hungry plant, so it will benefit from a feed weekly, once a week in the growing season, as opposed to maybe once every couple of weeks for a lot of my other houseplants. I suggest maybe once every couple of weeks, maybe even once a month for some plants is more than enough in the growing season. But this guy, weekly in the growing season. And I always say growing season because feeding a plant, any type of plant, when it's not growing is going to be pointless. In fact, it's going to be detrimental to your plant. So you only feed it when you see signs of active growth. So in springtime, as soon as it starts to wake up and start to grow, that's when you start the feeding, and the regular weekly feed, it will be able to take that nutrient in, get it into the roots and make use of that, convert that into energy to make more leaves and grow. So it needs it, but it's no good if it's not growing. So in the winter, as you get through to the colder months and you have it indoors and it starts to slow down and you can't see any active growth, you need to take that feed right down, maybe start to slow it down to every 2 weeks and then monthly. And once you get into the autumn period, you need to cut that out, slow down the watering as well, because it needs less water if it's not actively growing for the same reason. You don't water it the same amount in the winter, because if it can't use that water, it's just going to sit there. And if you keep watering it as you did in the summer when it was taking it on and using it, and water was going through transpiration through the leaves, it's not doing that because it's not got the overall temperature around the plant, and it doesn't have the light levels, and it's just not actively growing. So you need to adapt your watering and feeding based on the plant and based on what it's doing. Now, if you live in a country where it's hot all year round and in the winter it's warm and your plant stays actively growing, you can keep the watering coming, you can keep the feeding coming, because that's fine for your plant. But you need to adapt it based on where you live and based on what the plant is telling you. That is how to be a really good plant parent. So I hinted earlier on in the video about it being tricky over winter, because this does need to come inside if you're in a country in Europe, say, where it gets cold over winter. If you're in North America, Canada, somewhere where you get snow in the winter, it's not going to make it. You need to be inside. But the trouble is with heating, it's not conducive for plants. The dry atmosphere that central heating creates will also not be conducive for these plants. So we need to be very careful. Keep it away from any radiators or any heat sources where there's constant heat coming out. It will dry out these plants. It will not like it. It will actually prefer cooler temperatures once we get into winter. If you can get it into the cooler temperatures, say 8 degrees, I'm not sure what that is in Fahrenheit, 50, something like that. You want to cool it down. So if you've got an unheated conservatory or a porch or somewhere which is unheated but still got light for it to make use of that light, you want to slowly introduce it into colder temperatures. You don't want to bang it from 25 degrees, 70, 80 degrees and then put it right the way down to 50. You want to introduce it slowly but get it into a cooler environment, because what you can do, once it gets cooler, it will go dormant, and that's quite useful, because once it goes into a dormant environment, then you can really slacken off the watering and just make sure that you water it just enough. You don't want it to totally dry out, but it's not going to be using the water, so you don't want to keep it wet all the time because it won't go anywhere. The roots will rot and it will die. So you want to keep it moist. The air around it will generally dry out the soil a little bit, so keep an eye on it. Just keep it from being totally dry, but you don't want it too wet either. Again, that's something you're going to have to play with and try. Water it and just wait and see. Pick up the plant, feel the weight. Is it drying out? Once it gets dry, then you can water it again. Sorry, battery died. Where was I? Yeah, get it through the winter, look after it, and then as soon as spring comes around and the weather starts picking up, it starts growing again, you can increase the watering, start feeding again, and you're off to the races. You can keep it outside if the weather's good and it's not too cold. Wait until those nighttime temperatures increase, because it won't tolerate too cold, certainly won't tolerate any frosts. If you've got one of these and you have any hints and tips, let me know down in the comments, because I'm always happy to hear your advice and your suggestions. Please give this video a thumbs up if you found it useful or helpful or entertaining or anything like that, and subscribe for more houseplant and bonsai related videos coming along very soon. Bye for now.